Florida State fans, I feel like we should start like a second live stream that's Judge Judy kind of deal. Maybe we should take off on that. My goodness, the legal pursuits continue for Florida State. And if this one can be proven, ouch, this is a horrendous look for the ACC. Wow. 59 pages to sift through for all sorts of lawyers and judges. But here we go. Florida State's lawsuit against the ACC, and we will continue with that discussion right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you all being here. Florida State Live. We come your way each and every Wednesday, 6 o'clock Eastern time. Chris Frazier's right next to me, Spear Addicts. We always appreciate Chris's expertise. We got Jen Knoll 2013. Jen, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Chris, you are usually a go-to when it comes to this business. I mentioned to these two before we started, everyone, that I saw the headline earlier today, and I thought, okay, this is going to be something else I'm going to have to take a dive on to understand what's going on. But it's pretty easy to understand after the first paragraph what FSU is accusing former ACC Commissioner Swofford of. But Chris, I'll let you take it from here in regards to the explanation.
I mean, it's something that I think that James and I covered probably a year or so ago, where we put together that Swofford and Swofford's son were colluding together in corruption as far as how these things worked with Raycom Sports, and how ESPN and Fox both outbid Raycom Sports, but the ACC decided to choose Raycom Sports because they had a relationship with them for over 30 years, is what they said. The truth of the matter is Swofford's son was employed, if not partial owner of Raycom Sports, and he chose his son's company, therefore throwing 85% of the money that Raycom Sports makes was made now off of the ACC contract. I don't know what corruption sounds like to some people. I don't know how it gets much more worse than the nepotism that was done between two companies that absolutely had zero business of getting that type of contract, because they couldn't. They only cover 2.3% of what ESPN covers. They only cover 2.6% of what Fox Sports covers in college football. The range that Raycom Sports covers as far as look, here's the funny part to me. Both of them are out of North Carolina, in the same city on top of everything else. So I don't know how everybody else wants to look at that, but it's pretty simple. It's cut and dry. I think with what Florida State put out there, even though the news may be old, maybe it's been talked about multiple times, the fact is now that it's on the amendment on Florida State's side. So it's made public that Florida State sees that. I call it the Swofford Gate. That's what I named it last night. And that's exactly what it is. You can call it the Swofford Gate, the Swofford corruption. You can call it just nepotism at its best. However you want to look at this, corruption's corruption. Florida State, they say they're bringing out the big guns, is what most media has been saying. I told everyone the very honest truth, not an opinion. The facts are is there's a very small gun and a very small bullet compared to what Florida State actually has. I unfortunately can't just come out and say this is what they've got, because then that's showing their hand. And this is the only cards that they wanted to show. They've got plenty more in the chamber. Now it's just wait and see what the ACC amends next, and then Florida State will come back with another gut punch. In my personal belief.
Okay, before I cut Jen and George loose on this one, Raycom Sports, when I think of Raycom Sports, I picture myself as like a little 10 or 12-year-old tyke watching Raycom Sports, like the Blue Bonnet. I'm going to date myself way before you guys, the Blue Bonnet Bowl and the Liberty Bowl. And they did all the Freedom Bowl and the low-level bowl games and whatever college football games that nobody wanted to see and all that business. But I was completely unaware that Raycom still existed even as of like 15 years ago. And so I'm seeing 2010 when this deal was cut that Raycom is still involved at this point. And I guess the only question I've got for you, Chris, would be why didn't this not come to the surface earlier? Because it seems to be fairly obvious.
I believe that it came to the surface, but it was it was the ACC doing what the ACC's done best on keeping people in check at the time. And it was easy to keep certain people in check because of who your athletic director was at Florida State, who would soon be promoted to a much nicer job, supposedly. There was a lot of deals made, if you want my personal opinion. Also, there's some fact to what I'm saying because of who was given jobs, who went from the ACC when they got fired as a member of this or a board member of that. Somehow they ended up at Raycom Sports. I don't think that was just by, I applied at Raycom Sports, seeing how I have no media backing. I don't have any experience in this, but hey, Swafford said as long as I did this, then Swafford's son will give me a job. There's a lot of stuff that's in the mix of this. I don't know if I'm answering your question exactly how you asked it, but it hit surface back in 2013 for sure. I don't remember the gentleman's name that was over media at the time, but he spoke on it, saying that they need to be looked into because it seemed like there was some shade being thrown around. And that's kind of how he put it, and he left it alone. And then ESPN, because they were also involved in some similar situations with Florida State and Raycom Sports, they kind of swept it under the rug and tried to talk about something different, like recruiting problems. Jimbo did this, Jimbo's leaving. That's kind of when it came out. When everybody was talking about Jimbo going to LSU, that's what they tried to cover it up with. And it worked perfectly because we more or less cared about who our coach was than we did about possible corruption.
This is something else. Jen, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm going to think about Raycom, and what I think about when I think of Raycom is an old college apartment. Those apartments that only allow that one cable company, to hook up to you. That's what Raycom makes me think of. Like, I can't even believe it's was a thing, honestly. Raycom makes me think of an old rundown Tallahassee apartment. That's the only cable choice you have. There's no such thing as streaming, but I don't know. And I'm not trying to get political here. I said it last night, but is little Chad Swafford, is he like Hunter Biden or something? Because that's what it reminds me of. It just reminds, he managed to keep all his jobs. The SEC pulled out of Raycom. Raycom lays off all these employees. Little Chucky or Chad Swafford was just hired, and he got promoted to the board. He didn't even lose his job. It's if you want to talk about nepotism, hey, I'm fine with it. I got a bunch of my jobs from it too, so I'm not going to say anything. But when you get these public figures that do this, it looks awful. It looks terrible. It looks awful. In reading these, 62 pages that Florida State filed, I loved every word of it. I loved every minute of it. It just looks like they woke up that morning and chose violence when they decided to file that. I absolutely enjoy it. I'm so petty. I love every minute of it. The one thing I will say is that when they made the statement about Swafford, about how he was going about, pulling that deal, my guess is they have something on that, or else they wouldn't have put that wording in there. Chris, do you agree? Because I feel like if you're going to put that in an amendment and a filing amendment to a lawsuit, you got to have something to back that up, right? This can't just be an accusation.
No, it's much more than an accusation. They've got
Okay.
They've got a good email chain.
That's okay. That's where I was wondering. Do they have email? Is it text? I mean, that was long ago. I don't know if text was, 2013 wasn't that long ago, but it's not, I mean, we were like what, on the iPhone 3, I think then? I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying, I don't know, how much technology is involved in that, but what I'm saying is I think Florida State has a good case, and I think what Florida State did was they're going to force this to be a settlement, and I think they're going to take a settlement. And initially, I thought they were going to get out for a little bit lower, but I think right now this amendment is going to make maybe the ACC come out and give a settlement number that Florida State can live with, and then we'll all be done. That's what I think. You know, I don't know. I could be wrong.
Yeah, but George, before you go, I think that this is all rolling toward a lot of what we've talked about many times on here, and I'm sure you guys have even more so on your individual platforms, that Florida State continues to push and say, here's more, here's more, here's more on our side, here's more on our side. Okay, yeah, I think that there's a settlement coming, because there's going to come a point where the ACC is going to be like, no more, no more.
Yeah.
Because maybe Florida State's still holding back. We still have a few other things that are maybe really nasty that you don't want to see, that people don't want out there. We can throw that out there too.
I mean, at the end of the day, when the ACC filed first, Florida State now doesn't really have to give them too much of their trial strategy. So now that the ACC filed first, I think ridiculously, in my opinion, because it was a very sloppy filing. They were basically suing for Florida State for something that hadn't even happened yet, and that something that Florida State is legally required to do, which is do that meeting publicly. So I feel like it's all, I don't think the ACC wants that grant of rights opened up, and I don't think that they want to have anybody, a judge at least, say, hey, this is invalid. Right? That's something they don't want to get to. So, because if they get that judgment, which could happen, I mean, we don't know. It depends on what judge they draw. It depends on how he looks at things. You know, it depends on the venue, all these things. But you don't want to put that even in a possibility to happen, because if Florida State is able to get that grant of rights to say, hey, this really isn't valid, then you have an absolute blow up. And these people are fighting for their jobs. So I think it's going to come with a settlement number. And I think Florida State is going to say, can we live with it or can we not? Or do we really just want to go further? I don't think they do. I think they could win. I do. But I think they're going to take a number and then just be done and get out.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, you guys pretty much covered it. I think y'all kind of named it there. Look, the first one was kind of civil. It seemed like awful bland. You knew there's a ton of stuff, explosive stuff throughout Discovery. That's what we've all been talking about. And to what Chris said, yeah, it's like they've been watching all of our shows, basically, with this latest one, this big 60-page one that came out. And even one that I missed. I mean, Swafford was at Boston College when the ACC added them. That started the whole damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
He was, some nobody at Boston College, and gets him added to the ACC conference. And that's how I ended up at Raycom to begin with. So it's like, it's a whole thing. We did a whole show. I forget what'd you call it, Chris? Swafford's what?
Swafford Gate.
He's got it Swafford Gate. We called it Swafford's Web. We did like a Charlotte's Web theme on ours, where we put Chad's head on a spider, crawling all over that ACC money and stuff. So whatever name you want to call for it, yeah. It's all about Discovery. Like, are they going to get there? Like, is the ACC willing to get there? I don't see no way, no how. Those text messages between the different parties and the just ridiculous nepotism. Even that, that clip of that article from 2008, where it's like pretty much the most incriminating thing ever. It's like Skipper says, oh yeah, Swafford says to Skipper, whatever you got to do to construct a possible way to keep Raycom in business with the ACC, do it. And that's what we did. So it's like, at the expense of who? If you're going to construct something like that and make something possible, who is that expensive, guys? I mean, it's just it's a matter of time. Like me and Jen, everybody's talked about the settlement, whether it'll be, I've guessed around 120 million, something like that. But we'll just have to see. I can't wait for the next one. We still have, I guess, February 16th, I guess, is still a date when they're going to have to answer. Each sides will have to answer the amended filings. So we'll see what those look like. And I'm sure that'll be real interesting.
The ACC is not ready for that.
No.
They're backpedaling so much right now that it's kind of funny. We'll just say
we talked about UNC and them coming out. Yeah, if we brought that, I mean, because that's kind of damning there. It's like, of all the schools to kind of go public, and it was them that was, out in the papers saying we're yapping like dogs over here this time last year when Alfred was doing it. Now they're saying the same exact things Alfred was saying last year. I mean, yeah, they're backpedaling. They're scared to their tits off, because I mean, Swafford, his son Chad, skipper, the whole thing, the whole legacy of how this thing got together was a bunch of UNC graduates. So when UNC is like, this is messed up and it can't go forward, yeah, they're not holding us in that grand rights. There's no way.
Well, you have to question here. Here comes the question: who was where when all of this started? Who was maybe representing such school? Who was part of such school? What emails or text messages go back to where that person may or may not have been at that time? The discovery portion of just that alone, I can promise you that North Carolina, if there is involvement with someone that was representing that school at the point in time, they don't want any part of that coming back on them, that the ACC was in cahoots with Raycom Sports because of a bunch of North Carolina alum, soon to be alum, not yet alum. That there's a lot of things that are known on Florida State side that I don't know if other universities in the ACC have. I know that Florida State has them. I'll put it like this: if Florida State wanted to be cutthroat to the point that it causes the ACC to bleed out and complete, they have the information without going to discovery to do so, and proof that's behind it. That's why I say that the ACC is not ready. They're absolutely not ready for, hey, we're going to show you what we've got after you answer our amendment, because we're trying to let you know that this is the very, very beginning of the surface that we're just now scratching, allowing you to know what we know, the depths of what we actually have. You really don't want it to come out if you want the ACC to stick around for any portion of time, because I don't know if the NCAA gets involved. I don't know if just all other conferences say we will not, we won't collab with them in any way, shape, or form. There's a numbers of things that could happen if particular information comes out.
Exactly, because this is the kind of information that if it proves true, that you just don't come to the conclusion, okay, well, Florida State's taking action on this and this screwed them. Well, no, if the ACC is conducting business like this, there's, this situation's hurting other schools, helping other schools possibly, but it's also, in other business dealings that, wow, it just does not put the ACC in a good place at all.
Get ready for fireworks, baby. I love it, man. It's going to be a fun anticlimax watching it all come apart. I didn't take any pleasure in what happened to the Pac-12 this year and that whole thing. I thought that was pretty sad, but this one, there will be no tears shed for the ACC when the hens come home to roost, if you will.
Yeah, it's sad because it affects alumni and it affects fans who are innocent, and even former players and current players and coaches and schools, even schools that didn't do anything wrong. But if there's incompetency or corruption in this case, I think it was more incompetency for the Pac-12, but a combination of incompetency and corruption with the ACC, then that hurts a lot of people. And it's going to be the demise of this conference. And I'll just make my one little father-son nepotism kind of speech here that I insert every so often in these cases, like the Iowa offensive coordinator situation where he was employed for 6 years and should have never had a job and never kept his job. Mark Richt at Miami employed his son as the quarterback's coach, who was not qualified and basically hurt his own team and his own program because of that. I don't get this. If you are at the level of Kirk Ferentz, Mark Richt, Jim Swafford, you have a ton of connections. You have so many connections. You can pick up the phone and you can get your boy a job anywhere, almost anywhere. Get him a really good job somewhere, but just that's what I would do.
Therein lies the problem, because everybody keeps kicking him back. Well, damn it, I'll do it myself. Basically. I digress.
It's different if you run the hardware store down the street and you want to give your boy that's your business. If he is going to run it into the ground, that's fine. You don't have to answer to anyone. But we're talking about an ACC that obviously affects 14 institutions and all the thousands and thousands of people. And then with these particular schools where they're talking about the highest paid employee in the state, and they're making moves like this. It's just incredible to me.
Well, the biggest question that I got was with this portion of it coming out, is Swafford or is the ACC or is Raycom Sports, are any of these people really this gullible or ignorant? No, they're not. They're just that cocky. They're cocky enough to believe or to have believed that no one would ever come after the situation, that everybody would be what they've been for since 2008. Choir boys that stood in line when they were told to, speak when only spoken to. And that's what they got to deal with because there were promises coming from other places. Everybody says, if I was this in my life, I don't need anything else until you have it. And then once you have it, then you want the next step, which the next step may not even be at the same organization that you're at. That might be something in totality completely different. I can tell you that people continue to dream no matter what dreams they fulfill. They're going to continue to come up with something new. It's the society that we live in. It's always about moving up the totem pole. With some of these folks, Stan Wilcox, you bastard, you're one of them. I know what you did. Florida State knows what you did. There's a multitude of ex and still some current athletic directors throughout the ACC. Also, some are in the SEC. And if those things come out about what deals were made behind closed doors, not only is the ACC in trouble, but I foresee some athletic directors. You could potentially see jail time for the wrongdoing of an institute, the wrongdoing of less than. I'm going to stop because if I say it's going to go into a depth of where it comes out and people are going to be able to just put it together. But the
Read the
fact,
tea leaves. I mean, guys, look where these people that were, all you have to do is go back and look where people were employed at these times and where they ended up. I mean, it's pretty simple. This is how business is done, like in the real world. We get it. Behind closed doors, you do friends for this neighbor. But usually, John Swafford does a favor for his son, but then he calls in an associate to do the next favor, from another company. They went to the same well 7 times in a row in such a manner where it's just like, what do we got here? It's like, this is why the RICO statutes were formatted. It's like, you're too obvious here. It's too out in the open. It's like every single time the ACC gets screwed, you get a promotion. Like, really, Boston College becomes an ACC right out of the mailroom. It's like you establish the pattern, but at least Raycom, it's one company. They could at least like feign ignorance and say, oh, well, that was just his career path. He made it up the totem pole. But no, because he was at Boston College and they joined the ACC right before he came to Raycom. So sorry, I couldn't help myself. I can't stand. I hope I meet this Chad guy. I hope I don't actually one day, but I'm sure he's a real piece of work.
well, the depths that it goes is what's scary. Like the Swafford situation being out there is one thing. The depths that it actually goes, the veins that have grown to the bottom of Earth's pit with these people of doing what they've done, it's. I'll just put it like this: there's people that are in jail right now for the rest of their life, and they've done less.
Wow. That's saying something.
All right. Well, it looks like we've got a lot of lot to unpack in future weeks and months then, or will be unpacked for us that we can respond to. So, Chris, I'll remember all that. You've certainly been right on a number of occasions in the last couple of years that I know of. So I'm looking forward to seeing all that.
I just have a really good contact. That's all I can say. And they share things maybe that they shouldn't.
Keep it coming, man. We love
it. That's right. We love it. These two can't exist for that long. Coexist. You can't imagine this going on for too much longer. This has to really expedite the separation.
It does. I mean, can you imagine when Florida State wins the ACC in football next year? Because that's what I'm predicting. I mean, Jim Phillips having to hand over that trophy again to Mike Norvell, just looking like Gollum after that ring, just like, please give me my ring back. He looked so upset having to hand it over this year. Can you imagine next year?
I think they just
That'll be
knew it
fun.
was. I feel like they just knew it was coming to the end. It's like I feel like Jim Phillips is just like a lame duck. Just like it's almost like a real deal. And I know Chris can't say anymore, but I mean, I can't wait to see in 5-10 years the documentary because it just plays like just a mobster flick with it. Just the one guy who's just too stupid, and his son, is this and that, so he helps him out and just gets everybody busted. So I really can't wait to see, what comes down the line because it's like. It's it's really hard to believe, and like Chris was saying, the further you look, it's just your mouth drops lower and lower. It's like, really, that guy too, this guy. So yeah.
So hypothetically speaking, what is Jim Phillips hypothetically to the ACC right now? Maybe in a measurement, you look at, well, eventually someone's going to call us on our BS. Swafford leaves, blah blah blah. Jim Phillips is now there. Jim Phillips did some things that he was very much directed to do, and very much everyone knew what he was doing. The issue was he made amendments to the contract by adding himself into the contract without any witnesses or any voting to be taking place.
Is he Uncle June from The Sopranos? Is that who Jim Phillips is?
We'll put it this way. Would it sound better for the ACC to allow Florida State to leave at least, or maybe at worst, the ACC has to crumble because now that Florida State is getting out, a multitude of others are now getting out, and we can blame it on, well, Jim Phillips made amendments without any votes. There were the correct things of the universities not knowing about it. All of these things was done in the actions of the new commissioner of the ACC. That sounds better on one guy made a mistake that is breached a contract between the ACC and all of its members. Then, hey, there's 36, 37 of y'all that have made outside deals in the corruption of being able to promise X amount of money to so-and-so, X amount of jobs to such and such, and an entire family is getting hired at this such and such place. Which one is more appealing to get out of this and it be one man's fault because he made a mistake, or going to the depths of the roots of the pits of earth and really pulling out the skeletons that the ACC really has between not just Raycom Sports. That's the thing. Raycom Sports is being focused on, which it should be. But oh, how much deeper it really goes. It's dissatisfying that people were this ignorant to think that no one would ever call this out. And you bring in people like Michael Alford, you bring in people like President McCullough, major law type minds that are like, wait a minute. So you're telling me that this was done on the behalf of Florida State, Miami, et cetera, where the ACC was in our favor, supposedly negotiating the best possible deal that they could get us. Why did they go with this deal if these two deals were offered that were better than that one, not only based off of the amount, but based off of the every 3 years we come back to the table to renegotiate the amount? It's the context that's behind it, on top of there's more money offered by ESPN and Fox. But ESPN and Fox was willing to come back to the table every 3 to 4 years and negotiate based off of growth of the conference. So you threw all of that out of the window to keep Raycom Sports in. Okay. But how is that in the best interest of anyone that is a member of the ACC right now? It's not. It hurt. Like, everybody thinks this is only affecting Florida State. No, we're just at the forefront of it, calling BS. Every team, including Wake Forest, including Boston College, even though they're not making, they're proud to make what they're making as far as the grant of rights goes. The issue with that is they were offered more from two other entities, offered more money than what Raycom Sports did, but yet it was good enough. Why? Why was it good enough? Because of everybody else that had the deals going on behind closed doors.
Told them to stop calling. Like, it's insanity.
Okay, got a couple of questions here. First, with Raycom, what you made the comment, Chris, that Raycom has about 2.5% of the audience of Fox and ESPN.
Mm-hmm.
What are they broadcasting at this point? They don't have any football games, do they?
No.
Yeah, those are all ESPN, ABC, AACC network. Yes. So
But
no
they make the
football.
money for it. Raycom makes the money based off of Raycom's giving ABC and ESPN those football games. They get an X amount of percentage. Raycom does, like, here's the flat rate we're going to give you for these games.
When you could have been going straight to the well.
And you could have been straight. Yeah, you could have been in the well altogether.
Okay. All right. I was wondering.
We all knew where this was going. ESPN knew it. Everybody knew it. But it was like, but we're still going to do this. But it's like, let the ACC show one reason in court besides Chad Swafford. It's like there's just, and all the, like, we've talked about. I'm sure there's a lot deeper. It goes a lot deeper, a lot more wide ranging than that.
So next, when did Swafford leave? He jumped ship, what, 2 or 3 years ago, something like that?
Yeah.
Do we believe that he basically jumped ship knowing this is coming? I got to get out of here, detach myself as much as possible.
He did the exact same thing that a Pete Carroll, what's my guy's name down there? Pete Carroll did it. Being the head coach, it's a little bit different, but he knew the sanctions were coming. He knew they were coming from Reggie Bush.
USC.
But I was also talking about the Urban Meyer.
Yeah.
He didn't leave Florida just to leave Florida. It wasn't because he was having heart problems. The facts of what was coming after Florida, based just on the merit of him being there, was the reason why he left, and it created chronic athlete's foot. That's what it was. People don't want to hear it. He jumps to Ohio State, and I'm not going to lie to anybody. Ohio State said none of the shenanigans. That was their wordings, not mine. The athletic director at the time said no shenanigans. We don't want none of that happening here. Why did he leave Ohio State? Kind of abruptly, in my eyes. It was kind of quick. It was weird. Well, I think it was because it was very simple. No shenanigans. Someone caught on to some shenanigans and said, you got to go.
Oh, yeah. He had a pretty public case of shenanigans there.
But it's the same. It's the same case, just in a different measure.
Yeah.
When it came to Swafford, he knew what was about. Crap was about to hit the fan, and he knew it. Florida State's been asking these questions for a lot longer than just this year. Clemson's been asking these questions a lot longer than this year. Do y'all think right now that Alabama, LSU, Florida can contact the SEC conference and say, we want a copy of an executed copy of our grant of rights? Do you think they can get it? The answer is yes. Do we think that the Big Ten can give everyone an executed copy of their grant of rights? Yes. Even the Pac-2 can give you an executed copy of your grant of rights. The ACC's been asked this question since 2016, and until this date that we are breathing today, not one university has received an executed copy of our grant of rights deal. Our lawyers don't have it right now.
So my next question along the commissioner line, okay, Swafford bailed, tried to detach himself, get himself as far away from a time standpoint from all this hit in the fan. Okay, so then in steps Jim Phillips. So what do we think Jim Phillips' angle on this job was? Was it completely innocent? I'm going to take a commissioner's job, even though this is going to be messy because there's only 4 or 5 of these in the country. So I'm one of the most powerful guys in the country. So this is just a job you take, even though it's a difficult one and he's going to face a lot of issues, and he's just trying to save the conference and bring in SMU, Stanford, Cal. Is he on the up and up in this? Where was Jim Phillips before? I don't recall his previous job.
Was he Northwestern athletic director or something like that? They brought him in. He's not necessarily the guy you bring in to fire everybody. He's not like a chainsaw Al. If you want to bring it to a Florida State, kind of business person. No, I think they brought him in just to pretty much soften the landing. Like, they knew what was coming. They knew this thing wasn't, what the SEC and the Big Ten's doing. Everybody knows it's going to a Power 2. And it just from his actions and everything since he hired him, it does not show we're saving the conference. It shows just, oh, we're not going to make a comment here. We're not going to. It's almost just go quietly into the night and try to get as much of this Raycom contract as we can go. Get it out before everything hits the fan. It seems like to me, because I just going back to the Cal and the Stanford things. It seems like they're trying to maybe salvage some type of G5 situation after Florida State and Clemson leaves. Maybe that's what they brought him in for, but I just can't see. He's just not making the moves. He wasn't there calling for FSU to be in the title game. He's like non-existent anytime he's supposed to be out there politicking for the conference. Like he shows up to take shots at certain people and talk about certain things he doesn't like. I don't know what the word for that is for somebody that comes in and does that, but he's there to suck out the last bit of money they can get before everything goes belly up.
But do we think he might have been standing up for somebody else? Was he not standing up for SMU or Florida State because it's Florida State and because they're fighting the conference? So if it was somebody else, maybe his tax might have been different.
Jim Phillips does what Jim, or whatever his name is, the Phillips, whatever his first name is.
Yeah.
That's fair, Mark. Saying that, but at the same time, like if that's the fact, then you're no good. You got to get removed, because regardless if you're mad at FSU, even if they're Darth Vader, that's still the ACC in the college football playoff. So it's like, you got to get you right out of there if that's what it is. Sorry, Chris.
Look at Phillips like the president of the United States, and I'm not taking shots at any. I'm not taking shots at any party or none of that. I'm saying this for both parties. That is your front. That's your face. That's who's going to take the shots if shit's wrong. Excuse me. That's who's going to take the gratitude if things go great. Just like quarterbacks, no different. If everything goes wrong and they lose, it's the quarterback's fault. If everything goes right, the quarterback won the game. It's a place. Here's the issue. Phillips is a do boy. Phillips does as he is told, when he is told to do it, and how he's told to do it, and he does exactly that because his job requires him to be exactly that, a do boy. But here's the thing: what I think they told Phillips, they spoke honey in his ears till sugar ran out of the other one, and he did not realize in the grand scheme of all things, all they were doing was injecting him with type 3 diabetes of the brain. That's all it was. They told him, you can come be the hero, add teams to the conference, grow the conference, get better deals, blah, blah, blah. But we need you to do these things first. If you can get us through these things, then we'll allow you to come be a hero. So if you preach to people that have an ego and you tug on their ego, some people call it circle something, but if you do it well enough, which this is an amount of members that know exactly how to do exactly what it is that I'm saying that they did to him, and he believed it. Here's the issue. You didn't get that in writing. You got told you were going to be able to do these things. You got told you were going to have the opportunity to do this. But in reality, your contract said, do as I say or have no job. It's as simple as it gets. So I don't care what Phillips did, does, don't do, continues to do, or shuts his entire career down. It really doesn't matter to me, because is he solely or probably a piece of the problem? Yeah, of course he is now. Was he before he took the job? No. Did he know what he was walking into? Absolutely not. There was crap all over the floor. They covered it with rose petals. He stepped on one of them, and here it is. I mean, this is what it is.
Yeah, he's obviously insignificant to Florida State's pursuit at this point. He just is the guy that's there that didn't create any of this. All right.
Patsy, as they say.
Yes, the patsy. Yep.
Or a puppet. I would kind of call him a puppet a little bit. Because I think he does what he's told, and I think he's quiet when he's told. I think he's loud when he's told. I just think it's funny that when Florida State, I think it was before anybody knew about the fact that the ACC had filed that lawsuit first, right? He did put a statement out right after that, the trustee meeting, and was talking about how disappointed they were, blah, blah, blah. But they had already filed a lawsuit. So it's just, I don't know that he knows he works for the ACC and that he's the commissioner of the ACC, because I feel like he's in witness protection right now. I don't know. I think he just signed something. He's like your old grandpa who's like in bed. You should take his keys. He signs what he's supposed to sign, says what he's supposed to say, and then just keeps going.
And so who's in control? Are we talking combination of like
That's the
big money
question.
donors at institutions, school presidents, corporations, athletic directors?
You said it, Mark, not me.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I figured. Okay, probably in that order too.
Which one of those schools actually came out and said, "Hey, this place is being run kind of like a dump. Like, what are we gonna do?" That's weird.
There's no
Because
doubt.
they're only focused on making one thing better, as their pocket. They don't care what happens to anyone else.
And it's actually, but what we're sizing up here with the last two commissioners, with Swafford and with Phillips, runs in contrast with the better conferences, because sure, there are big money people pushing and prodding and influencing, but Greg Sankey's a pretty strong guy, and he's got pretty decisive direction on what he wants to do and what he wants to accomplish. And the same thing with Big Ten leadership. Not necessarily, I don't know about Tony Batiti. He's only been in the job for a few months, but Kevin Warren to a certain extent, and definitely Jim Delaney, and being the Big Ten commissioner for 25 or 30 years. It was more about you just knew that they had a large say in directing the conference. And those have been the more successful conferences. Even Brett Yormark with the Big 12. Now they're limited by the schools. Those programs are only going to achieve so much, but it's going to be a well-run conference, and they're going to be able to get eyeballs to the TV sets and watching the games. They're just not going to compete nationally because they just don't have those kind of football programs.
I'll posit one hypothesis here and kind of how we got here. And when you talk about, we all know where the money is centralized and stuff around the conference. And like we just talked about, you named the whole list of the people where the power comes from. You look at that circle of schools and stuff. I think this all goes into kind of football becoming, key number one. Obviously, we know that's the whole deal with Raycom and football. That's how we got messed up. But it was somewhere along the way, a group of people that resented this whole thing of football is what it's going to have to be, just decided we're going to get as much possible money and as much status and help our people out as much as we possibly can until this thing goes. And when it goes, it doesn't really matter where Duke or some of these other places end up, because they take 64 teams in the basketball and anybody can schedule anybody in basketball. It kind of feels like that. It's like they just decided in 2008 or whatever, we're just not going to compete with the SEC and Big Ten. We're just going to figure out, like Chris said, like we've talked about, and like I keep bringing back. Maybe it's because I'm watching The Sopranos right now, but it just seems like just a big mafia, just to play, just to get, and that's what they're doing. They've got different gets set up with each other. Get this guy a job over here, get this contract, get this guy off my back, get this ultimatum, and that's how we ended up here. And you get Jim Phillips, I talked crap about him, but at the end of the day, like, what was he going to do? He never could. I don't think he ever came in with a chance. Maybe they did, like Chris said, fill him full of sweet nothings, and he thought he could come in here and be a hero. But I saw COVID and I saw Notre Dame come and just pee all over us and do exactly what they wanted. So it's like, I never saw a single move. What single thing has happened in the past 20 years that the ACC did that, like, okay, that might could help? Was it Syracuse?
So does anybody think that the Notre Dame payment being made public is what made the ACC so mad? Because I think it is. I really do. I think when they said that Florida State released all that confidential information from the grant of rights that, they think is held so sacred, like it's Indiana Jones needs to go grab it out of a vault, I think that did piss off some schools that the ACC didn't expect it to piss off. They're allowing Notre Dame full-on partnership. They get money and they do nothing for the ACC. Nada. Not a damn thing. Nothing. Zero. Nacha. They get money.
I don't know if they don't do anything. And the only reason I'll push back on that, and I'm in complete position that the ACC should have never gone into an agreement with Notre Dame. The SEC, the Big Ten, they wouldn't take on a partial member. They wouldn't take on somebody. They've got too much pride. They've got too much self-respect to let a school abuse them, especially the COVID year. Yeah, come into our conference. We'll give you a lifeboat for one season. You can abuse us for 1 year, maybe even win our championship and then leave again. No. So I totally agree with you, Jen, on that point. But the ACC is obviously getting something out of Notre Dame, or they wouldn't make the agreement. What they're getting is 5 or 6 games where the attendance, the TV rating is going to make them more money through advertising than it would otherwise. It's going to bring
You could
more
go out and
fans to the conference.
schedule
I
out of
think
conference
Notre
game and
Dame,
get paid more. That's kind of forced on you. It helps the conference office. It's like, that's all it helps. It doesn't help the members. Maybe it does help a smaller school. They're pumped to play Notre Dame, but it just seems awful. Like, it's just like, you're right. There is some positive
it's a
income
bad
that
deal.
comes
It's
to it, but
stupid.
it's like, it helps the league office. It's just another facade they can put up to like pretend like we're trying to make things better.
Yeah,
You
I
know, that's why
mean,
it's so
like,
aggravating.
yeah, I think Notre Dame does bring some things, but like in all honesty, the sports that they actually play in the ACC, they don't that doesn't move the needle at all.
Well, we don't get
If
anything for tier 2 and 3 rights anyway. So those,
exactly, so it's like if basketball was a big damn deal, Gonzaga would be in a conference. I mean, like, let's just be nobody, basketball does not move the needle like at all, or Kentucky would be a higher member in the SEC, and they're not. Like, nobody gives a shit what Kentucky thinks or wants or says. They basically tell Kentucky, you sit down and you're going to vote the way we tell you to vote, right? I mean, that's all they bring to the table. So for me, with just with Notre Dame, I think that was such a snow job from the ACC to the other members. I don't know. It's weird to me. And then I think that's where the ACC got bad, because I think you had other members that got a little upset by finding out that Notre Dame's getting money from this. They're getting money from this.
Well,
Yeah, don't get me wrong. It's a bad deal, and it's a dumb deal, and it's a bad looking deal. I would have never done it. Again, it shows absolutely no self-respect or self-pride in your conference that you just let a school abuse you. But I'm just saying that that's the reason they did it, was for a little quick cash from Notre Dame football games.
I mean, okay, so I agree with both. Mark, I agree that I can't say that Notre Dame did nothing. But I will say that they were paid tenfold for what they did.
Yeah.
That's the issue. What they were worth.
Perception for the league office. That's what they bought. And they overpaid by a large margin.
And what they could have done is split that money with Florida State and Clemson. Look at it that way.
But it's not even good perception. Anybody that knows what they're looking at knows it's a bunch of BS. But it's the same exact thing with this deal. Oh, it's a record deal, biggest deal ever signed. 6 months later, it's 50% of the, you know what I mean? And then 2 years later, with 28 years left, it's the worst deal in the history of sports. It's like all they care about is a little bit of perception. I keep going back to the mob thing. Just keep just enough of perception out there that you can keep the cash flow, keep the gets going. That's just what it is. So I'm sticking with that.
And I mean,
I
think when they made that
cover up. That's all it is.
When they made that deal, didn't idiot Stan Wilcox come back and be like, oh, well, they're actually going to join in football, knowing full well Notre Dame is not joining a conference in football just to get that vote. Am I misremembering that, Chris? You're shaking your head like I'm right.
Yep, you're right.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. That was everybody. That was the whole thing. They're sitting, they're gaslighting us, telling us that this thing's going to happen, and we're all sitting here saying never. And then you have the prime opportunity to at least make them join, like, at least for 1 year or a shorter period of time, and like, no, you just let them get all the benefits and not have to commit to anything. It's like, there's just a mile long thing. We could do the 10-hour show talking about this BS and all the crazy moves they made.
Well, look, if Notre Dame's going to join a conference, it's going to be the Big Ten. We all know it. You know it. I know it. Everybody knows it. That's the only conference they're going to join. So for the ACC to just walk out on this limb was so delulu. I don't even know. I don't know what to say. They're not joining the ACC with your slim pickings. Like nobody's doing that. Notre Dame's not doing that. If they join a conference, it's going to be the Big Ten. Everybody knows it. I don't know what else to say. Or they're just going to allow idiots like you to give them more money for nothing.
All Notre Dame's waiting on is Florida State. Who do you think put it in Florida State's ear that we were being done wrong?
I mean,
I wouldn't think anybody have to put it in their ear, but I damn sure.
Yeah.
I bet Notre Dame was probably like, "You want to look at this? You want to look at what they're not telling you?" Like I definitely could believe that.
So how did Florida State know how much Notre Dame paid?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean,
I believe it. They've got no allegiances there.
All of
I
this.
do think. I think if Notre Dame jumps with Florida State right now, if Notre Dame went to the Big Ten, which we know is not going to happen, alignment would be over. It would.
All I can say is if the Big Ten ends up with Florida State and somehow pulls Notre Dame in, I don't know how anybody's going to say the SEC is anything more than what its second tier would be in my eyes. But that's money. That's just money.
I'm going to have to still be consistent because Notre Dame's football team has been living off. I mean, they're as bad as Miami at this point.
True.
Well, let's not go that.
I mean, they've made a
Wow.
playoff. I mean, they've made a playoff. So
They've made a
they
couple
get handled
playoffs, and I wouldn't compare them to Miami.
I'll compare them to some people. Look, here's my thing. I love that the fact that it's finally here.
I'd say Notre Dame roughly has the same winning percentage as Florida State the last 20 years.
Without the titles, yeah. It's been pretty close.
Yeah, without the titles. Sure.
Well, one title.
I guess 25 years you'd have to go for two. Yeah. It's like I still live like it's 2019. It's tough, man. That 2024 just looks weird, buddy. It looks weird. But here we are. We're living in the future, baby.
Yeah.
2024.
Here's my question, Mark. Should Notre Dame be proud of that with all the resources that they have?
Should they be proud of
with an independent schedule?
I was just making a correction. I was just
I'm just asking.
If I catch anyone that I think, okay, this needs to be cleared up, then I step out with that. No, Notre Dame's not Ohio State. They're not Georgia. They're not Alabama, and they've not been that. I've lined up all those numbers for the last 25 or 30 years. They're nowhere in that realm, but they're a top 10 or 12 program in the last 10 or 20 years. They're in that range.
I mean, yeah, I'm with Chris. I don't know. I think in the last 20 years, sure. I don't know. I just, I don't know.
Okay. Well,
Indy is
like it's like with Brian Kelly leaving for LSU, they had to promote within. I don't know. For me, I don't know. Their recruiting woes, I don't know. They win good games and then they lose horrendous games. That's why I compared it to Miami and plus the no title stuff. So,
yeah, well, they don't have titles. They don't play in a conference. So there's only so many teams.
Oh, no, I meant like national titles.
Well, there's only so many teams that can win national titles. We could go on and on about teams that don't win national titles. There's only 6 or 7 that have won national titles in the last 20 years.
That is a fact.
But don't you feel like that's kind of Notre Dame's fault that they don't play in a conference?
Oh, yeah. They could join it. Oh, shoot. Everybody wants them. Sure. Yeah. That is their fault. That is their fault. And if I was the other 4 conferences, I would merge together on this front. We're shutting out Notre Dame. We're forcing them to join a conference. They shouldn't be the only one not in a conference, doesn't have to play a conference championship game, all those things. I would just block them.
And of all the people out there, who is it that eliminated that possibility and said, screw it, you can play 6 games of random accord every single year with us to where you never have to worry about that shit? Excuse
And
my
in
language. I'm
2020,
sorry,
when
Chris.
all the
That's
conferences only could play
Mark.
conference games and they were going in their silos, it was the ACC. When if everybody would have said, "Sorry, the Big Ten's playing its own schedule, the SEC to the ACC, Notre Dame, you can't play a football schedule this year." Nope, the ACC bailed them out.
They'd have been a bind with the playoff. They'd have been screwed. They'd have been
Yeah,
scheduling a bunch of,
the ACC
you know,
should have said, "You want to play this season? You sign a 20-year contract, and you can play football with us this year, but you got to play for the next 20 years too."
facts.
And I rooted for Notre Dame so hard that year, and I could give a damn about Notre Dame. I could care less about Notre Dame, but I was rooting so hard for them to make the ACC look bad and win the conference championship and say, "We won the conference championship, and then we're bailing on you. Screw you. We used you for a year. Bye." And they almost pulled it off.
Almost.
Yeah.
Why does Notre Dame have so much control?
That's what I'm saying.
Because there's no commissioner of college football and there's no governing body, so nobody's unified. So is it lucrative for individual schools to schedule Notre Dame home and home series and keep them
Yes.
going as an independent? Yes. But if the governing body of college football would get together, if there was one, they'd say, "Notre Dame, you need to fall in line with everybody else, join a conference," just like the NFL.
Like the NCAA or something like that.
Well, yeah, if the NCAA had power and was functioning.
They don't.
No, they just
Stanley Wilcox. We're talking to you up
the
there,
NCAA
buddy.
just follows leads on who to chase down and discipline and investigate.
They're really cracking down on NIL nowadays, ain't they?
Yeah.
Every day there's a new investigation on the rules that they refuse to make, but we're breaking them somehow.
Well, we are well past time, so I appreciate all of you guys being here. And when I used to have my setup different with my soundboard and everything, and will again here very soon, man, I would just let you guys, I would just plug into my next deal and continue and say, you guys can go as long as you want. But I got to shut her down. Chris, Spear Addicts, when are you live?
Mondays and Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. Here lately, it's been all the time.
Excellent. So we appreciate Chris being here. He's so busy, but he makes time for us. Spear Addicts, the place to be. George, hit us up on the Renegade Report.
That's right. It's going to be Tuesdays and Fridays at 7 Eastern is our normal time. You can touch me and Jen right there. And Sundays, you never know what time, usually around noon.
Folks, follow all three on Twitter. You see the Twitter handles there. And again, Spear Addicts, the Renegade Report, the place to be. And make it on back here next Wednesday at 6 Eastern.
Go check out Freddie Stevenson Part 2 video on the Renegade Report. It just uploaded there an hour before we came on. So go check that out.
And Florida State fans, if you want a good watch and you want to celebrate and enjoy the last 20 plus years of football comparison with Miami, check out the video I dropped today on a comparison between Florida State and Miami. We went pretty in depth on a lot of different metrics, and it'll put a smile on your face.
Yeah.
I'm 100% sure it will.
It does. We will see you soon. Thanks.